witness to this. What a beautiful name it is, the name of Jesus. You didn't want heaven without us, so Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate
Thank you all for coming today. I know it's a difficult reason that we are all gathered, but it brings me joy to see how well remembered that Darlene will be. I'll start with a quote from J.R.R. Tolkien, as I think it's appropriate for the time. I will not say, "Do not weep, for not all tears are an evil." And also, before I get too caught up in my emotions, I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone who's been on this journey with us. We certainly would not have made it this far without all the loving support and prayers that those who are here today, visited yesterday, and are watching online now or later have provided. At Darlene's first anniversary of her lung transplant, we had a map made up that had over 550 entries encompassing 9 different countries and 41 states. And I know that that's only a partial representation of those who cared for her. It would take me until the middle of the service next Sunday to properly thank and share memories of all those that Darlene cared about so dearly, so I won't try. And even if I did that, it couldn't be enough. So please accept the deepest thank you from me and my family for all that you all have done. Always the one for a good party, my social butterfly of a wife, I'm sure, is a little disappointed that she's not able to be here right now. She would love to see everyone gathered, and I can imagine of all the laughter that would be shared between her and those who loved her. But I'm also sure that she is enjoying heaven, and that she will take the opportunity to party it up with us once we get there. The thing that I'll miss most about Darlene is her beautiful smile and joyous laughter. Time and time again, people have reminded me that her smile was the way that Darlene found her way into all of our hearts, brightening up any room she stepped into. I can recall laying in my bed one night talking with my roommate in college about Darlene. I said I didn't know if I could date her because she was just too happy. And sometimes I don't want to be happy. And I don't think she'd let me do that. I thankfully got over this and decided that perhaps Darlene was someone that I should really get to know better. Watching movies was something that our family enjoyed doing regularly. And like many families, Disney is a regular option with 2 small kids at home. One of the movies that we particularly enjoyed during the last couple of years was Inside Out. For those of you unfamiliar with the story, it centers on a young girl, but really on the emotions that live inside her head. These emotions help make up the character, and you can see how, when each one has the control, the character's actions reflect whoever is driving. Now, a small detail you might notice if you watch closely in the film is that each person has a seemingly central emotion, one that takes charge and helps guide the other ones. After watching the movie with Darlene and the girls one night, during our bedtime routine, I asked Josie what emotion she thought was Mama's driving emotion. Josie thought about it for maybe a second, looked at me and said, "Mama's emotion is definitely joy." A smile came across my face as I couldn't agree more. Darlene was an amazing woman whose life was filled with and defined by joy. She laughed often, cared for many, and she's one of the few people I know that was universally loved by those who knew her. Darlene, from the very beginning, brought joy to those she came into contact with. Born on May 24th, 1994, she brought joy to her parents, Grant and Robin, after enduring pregnancy, hardships, and loss. Her name, initially meant to be a gentle tease, brought joy to her grandmother's view of her own name, redeeming it to where there was no going back for Grant and Robin. Darlene loved her dad, and a smile would come across his face whenever she would refuse to put a worm on the hook herself while fishing, but would still manage to catch either the most or the biggest fish that night. She would say that she filled the role of the son he never had, helping her dad spot deer in a tree stand and helping raise puppies that would become their rabbit dogs or family pets. And Darlene loved spending time with her mom, especially when she could call her up for an impromptu shopping date where they could compare to see who would save the most money while getting the best deals. She'd help her mom with her dog grooming business, and many nights were spent sitting up after a dance, talking about all that had happened. Robin filled a special role for Darlene in her final years, serving both as mom and caretaker, which is something that I know Darlene will be ever thankful for, that her mom was able to spend that time with her. Darlene spent her childhood with her sister Daphne. When Darlene was brought home, Daphne asked, "Are we going to fight?" Like all sisters, the sisters squabbled, but Daphne's love for her sister was truly shown as she bawled, thinking that she'd killed her after smacking her across the head with a baseball bat. The relationship changed as the sisters got older. By the time Darlene got to college, Daphne was no longer just the cool kid she wanted to tag along with. She was the woman that Darlene wanted to learn from and the friend that she wanted to have constant communication with. When Darlene became an aunt to Eliza, she was so frustrated that she had been home all weekend so that she could be the very first one to meet her, only to have Eliza come into this world right after she got back to Greenville. Darlene took every opportunity to learn from Daphne, watching as she mothered Eliza. And once Darlene became a mom of her own, she and Daphne grew even closer as they got to commiserate and learn from each other how they were setting their kids up for success and what they wished they'd known before they'd had kids. They would share stories of what their kids did that day, laughing at the things that reminded them of their own childhood. Darlene wished that she could live closer to her sister so that their joy could be shared more in person rather than through a phone. Daphne was Darlene's first friend, but she's far from her only one. She cared deeply for her friend Macy, and she was thankful that she was able to stand by her in the snow when we were married. Some of her best friends can remember their first time meeting Darlene, mostly in early elementary or before. Affectionately known as Wilson or Ween to them, the Fab Five, Katie, Emily, Micah, and Kylie, are discussed whenever the families get together. Darlene was always up for a dance party, taking silly photos, or inviting everyone over to her house after a football game for pizzas. These girls took it to heart, loving each other well and being there for each other. Growing from pranking one another throughout school, they all shared in becoming wives and then mothers to their own little ones. We were able to share special moments during our return trips to West Frankfort, where the families were all able to come together. Each of the five got to look out and see their kids playing with the kids of their best friends. One time in particular was spent on the back porch of the Wilsons' house, eating Robin's homemade pizza, while the kids chased each other with water balloons as everything came back full circle for the families. One of Darlene's best qualities was her ability to make friends, which was a great thing to have when she got to Greenville. As a transfer into the college, she had less time than many to find her community, but she quickly had a strong friendship with a group of girls that she lived with and went to classes with that became dear to her. Partnered with all of her friends through the Greenville football team, Darlene was extremely well known through campus, and she had a hard time getting to class as everyone wanted to talk to her when they saw her. Her friendship making was surely aided by her love of baking, something that she had learned at the stool of her grandmother's and mother's kitchens. Darlene found that baking was a quick way to make a good impression, and she practiced it often. Her kitchen was always full of the smell of freshly baked cookies, cupcakes, or brownies, and I think that she had friends over as often as she did just to have a reason to bake. This eventually became Bear's Necessities Cupcakes for a time when we lived in Greenville. She was able to bake on a larger scale, supplying the cupcakes for a number of college functions, birthday parties, and weddings. And I know it brought great joy to her to see all the smiling faces as they would take bites into the treats that she had made, and she was told, "These are the best that we've ever had." Darlene also had the privilege of teaching while we were in Greenville, and it was something that she loved dearly. Initially as a substitute, she was invited into many classrooms to provide instruction for a day to a week at a time. She shortly then found herself in a preschool class she could call her own, and several times would be doing our grocery shopping, and small children would come up and give Darlene a hug, saying, "Hi, Mrs. Johnson." I eventually had to learn that this was totally normal, and I should not be surprised at how many kids were impacted by my wife. But Darlene's favorite role was that of being a mom. She longed to be a mom ever since she was a child, and as our relationship grew, it was something that we talked about more and more. When Darlene became pregnant with Josie, she was so excited at the opportunity to love her. Coming home to a tiny apartment in Greenville with few things beyond a couch, a recliner, and a bassinet, it was far from the idealized start that we had pictured. But Darlene quickly found her rhythm. After we got to Rockford, Darlene and Josie would wake up together, enjoy breakfast, and snuggle as Darlene read Josie books. She used her experience of working at the t-shirt shop in West Frankfort to make fun shirts for her and Josie so that they could coordinate at every opportunity. She turned her love of teaching 20 into a love of teaching 1. And as soon as Josie was old enough, I'd come home from med school to find our wall covered in new paintings or drawings that Josie had done with Darlene, exclaiming, "Look at what our daughter did today." Josie would ask when she could do mama school again and was always eager for their next project. Darlene thankfully got the opportunity to know and love her sweet Hazel. With Josie having captured much of Darlene's empathy and sensitivity, Hazel had inherited her spunk and intentionality. Darlene would spend hours just laughing at the crazy things Hazel would say and do in our living room, and marvel at her ability to find the one person at a party who needed a friend. Her little ray of sunshine, Darlene loved being a mom to Hazel as much as she loved being a mom to Josie. As regulars in the new parents' corner at State Line Church in Rockford, Darlene quickly connected with friends like Jackie and started a group of moms to support each other through the challenges of parenting tiny humans. They would meet at a park, speak truth into one another's lives as they shared ideas of how they could all be better moms and wives. These moms with the friends that we made through medical school, like Becca and Erin, Riley and Addie, became Darlene's support system as she dealt with being far from family. And this was all during a time when connection was difficult, as COVID had drastically changed the way that people related. Darlene became pregnant with Hazel, and while we're nervous about what our life would look like, we could not have predicted how things would turn out. Now, many of you know how our life has gone since Darlene got sick with COVID, so I'll not linger on the details. The time spent in the hospital, the numerous setbacks where we thought Darlene would not pull through, the times that people gathered and prayers were answered as Darlene made comeback after comeback. It was a time of tribulation, but each time we were surrounded by the people who loved Darlene, and it was all of you praying God's hands upon us that helped carry us through these hardships. We were lucky enough to be granted nearly 3 years longer than when Darlene should have passed. Darlene was able to partake in birthdays and barbecues, gatherings with family and friends, Christmases, Easters, and anniversaries. She wasn't always able to participate in the ways that she wanted to, and much was taken from her as time went on. Yet Darlene continued to find reason to go on and battle back from her setbacks. She made it through my time in medical school. She made the trip to Disney with her daughters and family, and she even brought joy to our new home in La Crosse. Our yellow house was an answer to prayer, and Darlene did not waste a moment that she was there. Our home was filled with family and friends who all came to visit her, and I'm thankful that she got to celebrate so much there. Now, there's little satisfaction to be found in the wondering of why this happened to our family, or why this happened to Darlene. Darlene did not always feel the joy through this time, and there were nights where we would cry together about what was lost and what would be lost in the future. She would say, I wish this hadn't happened to me, but I also wouldn't wish this on anyone. We came to an understanding early on in this journey that while we didn't want this story, that wasn't up to us. We could only decide what we were going to do with the time that we were given. We knew that God could use her suffering to help those she encountered, even if it meant it was a burden for us. She shared her faith and that God was still good, even if that good wasn't always felt while she lay in her hospital bed. Many told her how their faith had been renewed, how her strength gave them strength, and if she could still follow God through this, then maybe he was someone worth following. As we approached the finish line of Darlene's life, it became apparent to Darlene that what was most important to her was that she be able to remain comfortable at home and spend as much time as possible with her girls. Darlene wanted her final moments on earth to be spent with her family, and that was a comfort that we were able to provide. I'll cherish her final words to me of I love you too, and I wish that I could have loved her longer. Darlene's main concern was how her daughters would be impacted by the loss of their mom. She desperately wanted to see them go to school, find love, watch them dance in a white gown, and have children of their own. Sadly, this is something that Darlene will not be able to see on this side of heaven, but I'm hopeful that she'll be able to take time from her godly work up there and look down on the girls and smile when those times surely come. I take comfort in knowing that my wife loved the Lord, and that as she passed on from this life to the next, she was welcomed into his arms. I imagine that it looked a lot like this photo up here that was painted beautifully for our family. And I imagine that she heard the words, "Get up, little girl. Well done, my daughter." Darlene will be greatly missed by those who will remember her. Ever the competitive one, she beat us all to heaven, and I know that she can't wait to share it with us. While I'm in no hurry to get up there, I will longingly look forward to when we will meet again. As one who hated goodbyes and did not want them said, until next time, Bear, my sweet love, Darlene.
The scattered words
empty thoughts seem to pour from my heart. I've never felt so torn before. Seems I don't know where to start, but it's now that I feel your grace fall like rain from every fingertip, washing away my pain. 'Cause I still believe in your faithfulness. 'Cause I still believe in your truth. 'Cause I still believe in your holy word. Even when I don't see, I still believe. Though the questions still fog up my mind, or promises I still seem to bear, or even when answers slowly unwind, it's my heart I see you prepare. But it's now that I feel your grace fall like rain from every fingertip, washing away my pain. 'Cause I still believe in your faithfulness. 'Cause I still believe in your truth. 'Cause I still believe in your holy word. Even when I don't see, I still believe. Well, the only place I can go is into your arms, where I throw to you my feeble prayers. Well, in brokenness, I can see that this was your will for me. Help me to know that you are near. 'Cause I still believe in your faithfulness. 'Cause I still believe in your truth. 'Cause I still believe in your holy word. Even when I don't see it, well, I still believe. 'Cause I still believe. 'Cause I still believe. 'Cause I still believe. 'Cause I still believe. I still believe. I still believe. Oh, I still believe. I still believe.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Giamalva, and I had the privilege, and it really was my privilege, to be Lincoln and Darlene's pastor in Rockford, Illinois at St. Line Church, where they attended while they were there for med school. And Lincoln, that was beautiful. I've been to quite a few funerals in my day, and that's one of the, if not the most beautiful eulogy I've ever heard. And I was telling Lincoln this week that I remember the first time I met Darlene, and sadly, I told Lincoln also I did not remember the first time I met him, to which he he responded something because he's very witty and quippy, something, and we were bantering a little bit about, yeah, that's because nothing about me really stands out, or something like that. And I said, or I thought afterwards, man, that's so not true. Because let me tell you the one thing that stands out about Lincoln. If you can show me somebody with higher character, then I'll show you a unicorn, because they don't exist. As one of the most high character individuals I've ever met in my life. And the way that you carried yourself and your family and how strong you were through this season, it should be studied. You've put on a clinic. You are a role model to many. And I know you'd say it was your faith that carried you, but thank you for having the depth of faith that was a shining light in a dark time for so many. Now, when I met Darlene, she used to walk with Josie through the church parking lot. We had a very lovely concrete pad that she would stroll through, and they lived very close by, and it was during a work week, and she just popped in to introduce herself because they had recently started attending State Line Church, and luckily she did not lead with the fact that she was a Cardinal fan, or I would have had to redirect her to a different church. I'm a huge Cubs fan, but she didn't mention that. And you could tell right when I first met her how genuine and warm and caring and open and intentional she was. She came because she wanted to get more involved. Not to mention not only her intentionality, but just think of the courage it takes to walk into a place where you don't know anyone, find the pastor, introduce yourself, say that you want to get more involved. And what it showed was her deep love and commitment both to God and to others. And once again, this is because of the intentionality that she lived with. And as she got to know more and more people at State Line, that intentionality stood out. First of all, you could tell how much she loved Lincoln and how much she loved being a mom. Lincoln mentioned that she was a school teacher first, but really the joy in her life was teaching her little girls and teaching Josie. But you could also tell how much she loved her family and how much she loved her friends. So much so that Grant and Robin this week were just talking about how Darlene always had to be the first, very competitive, always the first to wish someone a happy birthday, that she took so much pride in this that she would set her alarm to wake her up or to a certain time to make sure that she was the first one to get that happy birthday in, because she just had to make sure, just in general, that she had just the right gift, or just throw the just right party, or had the just right pictures, or have the just right decorations for a holiday. Why? Because she loved and cared for her people so much, she had to make sure it was just right. And at the end of the day, if you needed someone to be there or to pray with you, then Darlene, she was your girl. She had your back. And I think it was because of how committed she was to her people that Lincoln and Robin would compete to decorate her hospital room just to make sure it was just right for her, because they knew that's what she would have done for them. Once again, she was intentional about everything. Intentional as a mom, intentional as a friend, intentional as a wife, intentional as a daughter. But the thing that she was most intentional about was her faith in Jesus. Jesus was her first love. And Jesus meant the world to Darlene. But that faith in Jesus, it would be tested. Her family told me this week that as Darlene got to the last week of her life, they listened to a sermon at State Line Church. It was the last sermon that they had listened to. It was a sermon that I happened to give. They were watching online. And that week, which is not normal for me, I'm usually pretty well planned ahead. I know the topics or what I'm going to talk about. That week, going into that sermon on Tuesday, I did not know what I was going to talk about. I even told our team, we have a meeting each week called programming. It's a planning meeting, and I was telling that team, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to talk about, but I think I'm supposed to talk about this character in the Bible by the name of Jairus. And this is a character that we had actually talked about a couple years earlier, and so it was a little unusual to run that topic back, but it was something that I felt like God had put on my heart, and now I know why, in part, why I gave that message. It was for Darlene, and it was for her family, because they shared with me how much that message, the tail end of her days here on earth, deepened her faith and helped bring closure to her. And they asked for me to share a little bit of the story of Jairus with you. It's in Mark chapter 5, and this will be unlike probably any funeral message you've ever heard before, but Darlene deserves for a funeral message to not be cookie cutter. She was an individual and unique. And so let me share with you a little bit of what I shared at State Line on that Sunday, but just a little bit about Jairus, and I think we can all find some hope. And I think this story will deepen all of our faith and hopefully bring some closure to our hearts as we ponder what Christ has done in our own life. I'm going to start with verse 21 in Mark chapter 5. Let me read it to you. It says, when Jesus had again crossed by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, my little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live. Let me just pause really quick. At this point, it's early in Jesus' ministry. He has huge crowds following him. And he has huge crowds following him because he's done things that nobody's ever seen before. He does miracles. He walks on water. He's feeding thousands. He's healing the sick. He's doing amazing things. But beyond just what he's done, he speaks unlike anyone who's ever spoken before. He puts the cookies on the lower shelf. He speaks in a way that everybody can understand. He speaks the very words of life. He's relatable and he's inspirational. And so all of these people, they had to be around Jesus. But what that meant, because there were such large crowds, that as if you were desperate to meet Jesus, you'd have to fight to get to him. You'd have to push through the crowd. You'd have to elbow in. And here we see now in this narrative that Jairus is one of these guys who's desperate. And why is he desperate? Well, he's in deep need. You see, he's heard about this Jesus guy. This guy is this miracle-working guy, and he's in need of a miracle now. Because his 12-year-old girl, his pride and joy, she's dying. And so he pushes through the crowd to get to Jesus. He falls at Jesus' feet, and he begs Jesus for help. Verse 24. So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. And so all of a sudden they're on their way to go see Jairus' daughter, and something happens as they're on their way. There's an interruption. This woman comes and she begins to talk to Jesus, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to read this part of the narrative. You're welcome to go and read it later if you'd like to. It's in Mark chapter 5, but know that he heals this woman of her bleeding. And so let me jump now to verse 34. It's about 9 verses down. He's speaking now to the woman. Jairus is standing in the wayside, and he says to this woman, daughter, the only time Jesus mentions that in the Bible, your faith has healed you. It's a very tender moment. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. And so here we see this amazing miracle for this woman. Oh, but we're not talking about this woman today. We're talking about Jairus. So now while all of this has happened, would you just for a moment put yourself into his shoes? He's in crisis mode. He's thinking, you're calling her daughter, but remember where we were going? What about my daughter? It's great that she's healed, but why are we lollygagging? Why are we chit-chatting? We got to go. This is like the ambulance with the lights on pulling over into the drive-thru. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't get a milkshake on the way to the hospital. Why are we pulled over right now? We got to go. My baby girl's in need of a miracle. And so he's waiting, toe-tapping. He's trying to be patient, expecting something. Well, then something does happen. A messenger comes. Verse 35. While Jesus was still speaking, he's speaking to the woman. Some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader, and they tell him, your daughter is dead. Your daughter is dead. Those 4 words are now echoing in his ears. Why bother the teacher anymore? You can leave now. It's over. And this moment has to be absolutely devastating for Jairus. Because hope? What's hope? Hope? It's gone. And now let's be real for a moment. Once again, put yourself in his shoes. This is a real human moment. There's no way that he's not just crushed but confused. Maybe even mad. Jesus, that woman bled for 12 years. She could have waited another 12 minutes. Why did you stop? She stole my miracle. She took my spot in line. This isn't fair. I don't understand. I think when we're faced with tragedy on this side of eternity, if we're honest, and we can be honest with God, he's got big shoulders, he can hold the weight of our honesty. The honest reality is we don't understand sometimes why things happen the way that they do. And the honest reality with faith in our broken world is sometimes we will be confused, even disappointed, why Jesus doesn't move when or how we want him to. But if God is a God, the creator of heaven and earth, then that means he operates outside of our will and our understanding. And if God only does what I want, if I could control him, then he wouldn't be a God at all. But what we do know is when we can't trace his hand, when we're not sure what God is doing, we can trust his character, that he's good, that he's for us, and that his heart breaks by the brokenness of what sin has done to this world too. But this is why those who have faith, they walk by faith, not by sight. If you could see, then you don't need faith. But sometimes faith is taking that next step even when your heart is broken, or you're confused, or you're hurting. But what's the key? To walk with him. And so it's in moments where doubt or fear or sadness, disappointment set in, maybe a moment for some of you like today. Instead of focusing on what we do not know or the questions we cannot answer, we can focus on a God that we can know. And we can put our trust in him because he promises us in his providence that he will provide. Sometimes he provides now. Sometimes he provides later. But he always provides on the other side of eternity. But I want you to notice something about this narrative. As Jairus is getting this devastating news, I want you to notice who's right there with him. Verse 36 says, overhearing what they said, Jesus told them, don't be afraid, just believe. Which means Jesus listens to us. His eyes are on us. He pays attention to us. He sees us when we're going through our grieving process. And he says, don't be afraid, just believe. Don't believe your fears, believe in me. Don't trust what your eyes see, trust me. Your faith brought you to me in the first place, and I'm still here. Verse 38, when they came to the home of the synagogue leader, so Jairus invites him into his home, and they continue on. It says, Jesus saw commotion. The funeral has begun, with people crying and wailing loudly, and he went in and said to them, why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep. But they laughed at him. It says they laughed at Jesus. So they get to his home. There's mourners. There's weeping and wailing. And Jesus is like, hey, what's going on? Why are we so sad? Stop the commotion. She's only asleep. You see, Jesus says that because death to believers is always only temporary. You see, 1 Thessalonians 4 says that the believers who have died are only asleep. Darlene's soul is alive and alive forevermore. It's only her remains that are asleep. And so what Jesus was saying is that pain and death don't have the final say. I do. But sometimes without faith, when people hear this, they laugh. They're like, who does this guy think he is? And that's what the Bible tells us, is that his power is foolishness to a lost world. But Jesus knows who he is. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me shall not perish, they shall live. And so he's like, let me just show you real quick what's up. Verse 41. He took her, the little girl, by the hand and said to her, Talitha cum, which means, little girl, I say to you, get up. And I heard Lincoln make reference to that phrase, little girl, because as far as I understand it, she told you the only tattoo she would get, if she were to get a tattoo, was that phrase. Is that correct? So that word, Talitha cum, it's right here in this narrative. And immediately, what happens? Jesus says, little girl, I say to you, get up. And immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around. At this, they were completely astonished. And that phrase, it's a beautiful phrase. It's Jesus' native tongue, Aramaic. It's what Jesus spoke in. It's like, sweetie, sweetheart, darling, little girl, get up. And they were all astonished. And of course they're astonished. This is astonishing. He just rose a girl from the dead. But here we are now, fast forward. And we should know better by now, because Jesus ruins every funeral he goes to. He even ruined his own. And that's why in part, days like today, of course we grieve and we're sad, but it's also a celebration. It's a celebration of a life, though short, well-lived, of a wonderful human being, but it's a celebration because of the promise of the resurrection. The hope that we have that Jesus ruined his own funeral means that any funeral for a believer is not the end. It's not goodbye. It's see you later. It's I'll see you soon. And Jesus here in this narrative, he's showing us that in the midst of our pain, that even if death comes, death itself is not final. Jesus has the final say if you'd only believe. And really what this story is, you may have heard the phrase gospel before, may not understand even what that phrase means. It's the message of Christ, the story of good news, but we get a microcosm of the gospel right here. Sin broke us, and it broke our world. And things like COVID came into it. Bad things happen. But we have to endure then in the midst of that brokenness. But Jesus doesn't ask us to wait or endure alone. He came, he died on a cross, not just to give us a way out, but to show us that he is with us. We're in a building right now. The name of this building, Emmanuel. Do you know what that means? God with us. And he's with every single one of us right now. But he didn't just die, he rose again to prove to us that one day, maybe not today, but one day, the promise of our faith is that everything will be okay. I want to share a really quick anecdote with you. There's a pastor who I follow and read a few of his books. His name is Levi Lusko. He's a pastor of a church in Montana called Fresh Life. And his 5-year-old daughter, Lenya was her name, she died 5 days before Christmas of an asthma attack in his arms. You can imagine the tragedy. About 25 days or so after she died, he wrote this in his journal, and I just want to read it to you as I'm beginning to wrap up. Today is Fresh Life's 6th birthday. That's the church, Fresh Life. January 14th, 2013. 6th birthday. An age Lenya will never reach on this earth. I wept so hard. In my devotional readings, I came to the account of Jairus' daughter in the gospel. Why, Jesus, did you answer his prayer and raise his daughter back to life, but not mine? I don't know why. But I do know Jairus' daughter had to die again, but my daughter never will. She lives forevermore. I lost it sobbing as I thought of the last time I hugged her. I'm so thankful I told her I loved her as often as I did. I can't believe that she is not in this world anymore, and I miss her so much. But it gives me great comfort to think of what Romans 16:20 says. God will swiftly crush Satan under your feet. It's interesting as I read his journal entry that he's wrestling why Jesus healed Jairus' daughter and not his. But as we look at the story of Jairus, it's very possible he might have felt the same way when his daughter passed away. And some of you might now be wrestling with the fact that Darlene didn't get healed maybe in the way that you would have wanted or expected. Why, Jesus? Why do you let these things happen? And this shows us to some degree we never fully understand or know why. God did a miracle for Jairus, and he's used Levi's story, and he's used Darlene's story all across the globe to bring strength and healing and hope and faith to lots of people. But it goes back to what I said earlier. When we don't understand what is happening, we can go back to who. It's not about the what, it's about the who. And that he's with us. And that his ultimate plan is one day he will fix and redeem all that is broken in this world. He will swiftly crush Satan under his feet. And so our job is to endure, to be with him, and to never lose faith, even if it's tested. Jairus didn't lose faith. Levi never lost faith. And Darlene, though her faith was tested, never lost faith. And I know without a shadow of a doubt, she was a walking miracle. I mean, 4 years earlier, she should have died. But God gave her the gift of time. Time to see Hazel, time to be with her daughters, time to know that they're going to be okay. Time to see Lincoln graduate from med school and to move to their new home in La Crosse. And she got a gift that many people tragically don't get. She got time to say goodbye, which is a gift in and of itself. But just like Jairus had to die again, miracles do end on this side of eternity. And Darlene's miracle ended. But she would not want you to feel bad for her. Yes, pray for the family. Yes, pray for the girls. Yes, pray for Lincoln. But she is fully healed, fully restored, and with deep breath in her lungs right now is singing hallelujah. You know, when people die, one of the things, a euphemism you'll hear at funerals is, oh, we lost such a great person. And what's true is Darlene was a great person. But what's not true is she's not lost. We know exactly where she is. She's in heaven with Jesus, exactly where we all want to be. She just got a head start on us. And she would desperately, as she's throwing a party up there, would want you to join her in that party. I learned something about Darlene this week I didn't know. She didn't just have an impact as a wife and a mother and a daughter and a friend, but she had a global impact. And there were some pictures of it in the slideshow, but Darlene had a heart for evangelism and for service. So as a teen, she would actually travel all across the globe and go on these mission trips and serve trips. And it's why would a young girl, smiley-faced girl from southern Illinois, right, travel the globe? Why would somebody do that? Because she believed at her core that Jesus was the one thing, the only thing that we all need. That is our anchor. That is our hope. And so after graduation, she chose, this was her, right after graduation, right? You guys went to Uganda. Not Daytona, all right? What a lot of 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds want to do when they graduate high school. I'll go to Daytona. No. She went to Uganda with her mom to share the hope of Jesus. And Robin filmed her using this little cube. You're going to see in a video that we're going to watch here in a second. And it's a little gospel cube that just shares the story of Christ and how he's no longer in the tomb, that the tomb is empty, that he is alive. And you're going to she's going to share with you, like she did with those people many years ago, the hope that she had in Jesus, but show you really and show all of us the love that she had for God and the love that she has for others. So watch Darlene in this video.
And
fill your emptiness. This represents man. You, me. This represents God. He is light. He's pure and holy. This black part, it represents sin. The Bible says that for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And because of that, there's a gap. God is light. We are darkness. They do not mix. The Bible says, for the wages of sin is death. But the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. God sent his only Son to die on the cross for our sins. All of our sins. His blood was shed, and he died a physical death to take the place for our sins. He was buried in a tomb. There was a stone in front, and soldiers that guarded. No one could go in, and no one could come out. But on that third day, Jesus raised from the dead, and he's alive in heaven today. The Bible says that Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. This is us, sinful man. And because Jesus died on the cross, he bridged that gap to God. The Bible says that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. God gives us this option. He invites us. You can say yes to him, have eternal life in heaven with him, or you can say no to God. Live in sin and live eternal life in hell. No one wants that. Bazin ilepi yopi ile mu achiani yo.
Nicodemus said yes to God.
Nicodemus ingadia Yesu matie
I said yes to God.
ima ngulupi yo vili Mungu mado.
And I've come today
Andri ini muso dia
to see if you would like to say yes to God
nezu mini ayuzu Mungu mado.
and have eternal life with Him.
Dan ringazo nyazuri betualo.
Now that you have heard my message,
Mi redi yo barbira.
do you believe that it's true?
Mi atire yo adania.
Amen. Would you like to pray
Micho Mungu zizala iberaya.
and receive Jesus into your heart
Mini Yesu nya izo simini Maria.
to fill that emptiness?
Yo mini opako fepi da Maria mini ne izu.
He's the only one that can fill it.
Eri balo chopi yonde mi masia kweda. Opere kana kwe pepi nyesi Maria re.
Alcohol can,
Ewe choni yonde re ko.
drugs cannot,
Arro bata dia choni ko.
women cannot,
O kui choni ko.
only Jesus.
Rualo Yesu iko.
If you pray with me,
E kamungu za ibera.
these words are not magic.
Eyo ya drikini yo azi kale ruleni iko.
They are not Muzungu's words,
Adini yo mundudi iko.
but if you pray
Ke ika Mungu ndezira.
and believe it in your heart,
Eyo ndia izura.
you will be saved.
Mi ngadre pasaro.
Who would like to pray with me?
Le Mungu zizali si barani ya.
All right. Amen. I'm going to pray,
Imu Mungu zizazi mini.
and you can repeat after me.
Minga ombi ya mavuti si. Yes, sister. Yeah. You start praying then.
Dear God,
Mungu amanere azibitu alimpe. Biombi Mungu
I thank you for this day.
ate bina wadakodu disi.
I thank you for coming into my heart
Ate bina wadakodu mini pesa simani Maria rosi.
and sending Jesus to die on the cross for my sins.
Alisuko Yesu napatia na zamatia.
Please forgive me of my sins
Kire kire tumeza kamani. Kire kire.
and fill my emptiness.
Azine mi toma.
I love you, Lord.
Mungu.
Thank you for saving me.
Awadako mini maparisi.
In Jesus' name I pray.
Yesu ni siazi.
Amina.
What 18-year-olds do that? That's amazing. The strength, the courage, the amount of faith. You know, here's the thing. Whenever death happens, this reality, it sinks in for all of us. And it's important on days like today to remember that whether you live 1 year or 100 years on this planet, our life, the Bible tells us, is like a vapor. It's here one moment and then it's gone. And so really the key with this life is just to be ready for the life to come. And Jesus, just like Darlene was sharing, is the one who makes us ready for the afterlife. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Or as he said himself in John 11, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? See, Darlene believed this. And so the question for all of us is just to ponder what Jesus asks. Do you believe this? Not what did Darlene believe? What do you believe? And you would honor her today to ponder that question deep in your heart. We know that Darlene loved to give gifts to people. Well, the greatest gift that you could give to Darlene is to receive the gift of salvation, to put your hope and your faith in Jesus so that you can be assured that one day you will see her again, but ultimately that you will see Jesus, that you know you will live and live forevermore. And to get that gift, it's very simple. You simply believe. You believe in your heart, and then you confess that Jesus is Lord. You believe he died on the cross for your sins, and he rose from the dead 3 days later to give eternal life. And so as we end, I think it would just be so cool, honestly, and so special to pray the exact same prayer that Darlene prayed with those children in Uganda. Now, some of you, you might be praying this prayer for the very first time. It's your way of saying yes to God. Others of you, you've prayed this prayer many of years ago, and this is just solidarity. Solidarity with Darlene and praying as a great reminder of the hope that we have in Christ. And so I'll just repeat each line. I transcribed it from the video. That was a little hard for me to hear, but I caught it all. And so if you'd like to, repeat after me, or really, repeat after Darlene, because these are her words. Dear God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for coming into my heart and sending Jesus to die on the cross for my sins. Please forgive me of my sins. Fill my emptiness. I love you, Lord. Thank you for saving me. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. We're going to listen to one more song, and after this song, you're going to be free to go. But as you go, go in the comfort and the peace and the hope of Jesus Christ. May his strength support you and sustain you, and may his joy and the memories that you have of Darlene also bring light to your heart.
They say sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. And right now I'm losing bad. I've stood on this stage night after night, reminding the broken it'll be alright. But right now, oh right now, I just can't. It's easy to sing when there's nothing to bring me down. But what will I say when I'm held to the flame like I am right now? I know you're able and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. They say it only takes a little faith to move a mountain. Well, good thing, a little faith is all I have right now. God, when you choose to leave mountains unmovable, oh, give me the strength to be able to sing. It is well with my soul. I know you're able and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. I know the sorrow and I know the hurt would all go away if you just say the word. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. You've been faithful, you've been good all of my days. Jesus, I will cling to you, come what may, 'cause I know you're able, I know you can. I know you're able, and I know you can save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. I know the sorrow, I know the hurt with my soul. It is well with my soul. was born defector. 'Cause all I know is you're my only hope. When I'm up, when I'm down, when the wolves come around, when my feet hit the ground, I just need you on my darkest day. When I'm losing faith, no, it ain't gon' change. I just need you. time has come. Still my soul will sing